Jerry S. asks, why do you think it is such a common thing for drummers to have a weak hand? Do we take the idea of having a dominant hand as something that should exist everywhere, but we select where we want that to be true? If all drummers acted like at day one, your body was supposed to be balanced between the left and the right, then every drummer would have a symmetrical setup, and any other setup wouldn't make sense. In other words, do you think it's strange that we are either right-handed or left-handed drummers, and that the other hand automatically becomes the weaker one?
Well, I think we need to back out of drum world for a minute and talk about using like your right or left hand. Like there does seem to be something natural about that, where even, let's just say, like infants or toddlers would have a preference of using the right or the left hand. So I think there's this unfair element of this where like you're already going to have picked a favorite, or let's just say, or how you're going to have discovered a natural preference of which hand you like to use early on, long before you started playing drums. So you're not going to be able to go into this with some perfect, unbiased symmetry. I don't think that's how this is ever going to work, unless you were literally raised that way, right? If you were raised to write with both hands back and forth, and here's a weird example, man. My grandfather, he's born in like late 20s or 30s, and he was left-handed. But they used to beat kids and make them use their right hand. That wasn't allowed. That wasn't allowed, right?
Why?
And I just thought that it was just like how everyone has to do it the exact same way.
Whoa.
It might be kind of like, do you know anybody that drives with their left foot?
Well,
Because you're not allowed to drive with both.
no.
They'll tell you, like, you can't do that.
And even one of the more interesting things is countries who have right-hand drive cars, the accelerator pedal is still on the right.
That's interesting.
Right? It's not reversed.
Yeah.
It's just on the other side of it's the same layout as if it was a left-hand drive.
Yeah, they
right?
just move the whole like column over. Well, I mean, it definitely can be somewhat trained for sure. Because I remember one time I was looking up like different tactics for how to edit faster, like physically how to edit faster in Final Cut. And there are a lot of people who will spend a lot of time training their left hand on a mouse, like how to get, just as comfortable with your left hand on a mouse. And apparently it can be done. But the problem is you're combating decades of experience with the right hand. Like, will your left hand ever be exactly the same as your right hand? I really don't know that it will. It's like you grew up listening to 4/4. We talked about this a few episodes ago. Will 9/4 ever feel exactly the same? Like, I think you can get it really close, but not exactly the same. I just don't think you can compete with that amount of time put in, right? Like listening to one genre or driving a car a certain way or using a hand or one side of your body a certain way. Another weird example, skateboarding switch, which is backwards.
Yeah.
Like, you can get it really, really, really comfortable, but it never feels exactly like your regular stance does, So that's the big thing I would say. I don't know that you're ever going to find this real perfect symmetry because you're just combating your entire life experience using, like, let's just say your right hand or the right side of your body. But there's another element to this, and that is that, do you want your hands, or is it best that your hands have the exact same skill sets? Like, isn't it kind of cool that your left hand is better at doing ghost notes with the finger technique and your right hand is more powerful and articulate? Like, I don't know what exactly that breakdown would be, but certainly it's probably true for all of us. Your right hand is way better at doing certain things, and your left hand is definitely better at doing some other things. And part of me sort of likes that approach. I like that if we were to have all of these different limbs, that we shouldn't necessarily try and match their skill sets, like note for note or dynamic for dynamic, that maybe there's something to having a different skill sets for each hand, because that's how you end up playing anyway. I feel like if you matched your right and your left hand, like measurably matched them, where they are equally as fast, what is the advantage? The advantage would be that you can switch, which we don't do. You can now play everything backwards.
Yeah.
Well, cool, except you don't need to do that, right? Like, I almost like the idea of having highly specialized limbs. And think another weird example of this would be like fighting, like MMA. Like, you know, they'll talk about Connor's left hand, right? Or John Jones' right high kick. Does it really serve them to put in the amount of time to be able to do that same thing with the other hand? They can switch stances, and now it's the other hand you have to worry about. Maybe in a certain context it would be a good thing. I don't know. I like the separation of having them specialized a little bit. Certain things you work on with your right hand, and you don't necessarily have to match that with your left. This is going to be pretty controversial. I think a lot of people would say you'd be best off matching them.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, there have been several drummers that will. One I can think of is Harry Meary.
Okay.
Right? He did something where he then played with his left hand primarily or like switched the sides, even though he's right-handed, and did that experiment. And he said that it was like kind of an adjustment period, but he was able to do it.
Yeah.
There's a couple other drummers that come to mind where it's, I mean, mainly if you're just playing pieces where, it would really help because my left hand is free to play this part.
Sure.
Or I can add more parts into this because my left hand isn't doing anything.
Yeah.
In these 4 bars or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I get where you're coming from. Like, there could be an advantage, but there really isn't that much of a noticeable or discernible advantage.
Well, maybe the way to look at it is like if you got your hands perfectly matched together, they're identical in their skill sets and capabilities, you're still going to play normally, right? You're still probably going to play like a right-handed setup. You could switch, but will you? Like, will you ever actually...
Does it really matter? No.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter. You're not like less Now, admittedly, getting your left hand to do all of the things that your right hand could do would allow you to be more creative, more expressive. You'd have a lot more options, I think. But is it worth it? Like, is that worth the time? Or my argument would be you can just concede that this is not worth it and admit that, that your left hand is good at some shit and your right hand is good at other things. And that makes up this musical blend that is you. Because there are some of the highest level drummers in the world didn't have what you would describe as matched hands. I mean, imagine Buddy Rich with traditional technique. Do you think he could just switch in on the right hand and play exact? Probably not. They were different. A traditional grip is probably an excellent example. Like, different skill sets, different techniques. To think you could just reverse those and they'd be exactly the same, like, probably not. I don't think Buddy Rich could do that. Any famous jazz player. I think I would put myself in the camp of like, I really don't care if my hands can do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't care. It's just, it doesn't matter. I'm okay with my left hand being really good at some stuff and right good at the other. That's how it appears to me. But I don't know. That's another great question for anybody listening. You know, is it worth it to match your hands? What exactly do you gain from that? Or would you be better off, again, conceding that they are both individual entities that are gonna be good at their own things no matter what you do? Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I think it's a weird thing too to be like, oh, this is the weaker one. I think maybe that's where people kind of want to strengthen it. It's just they just don't want to admit that this is weaker than the other, but it doesn't matter. Like we're saying, it doesn't matter.
Well, and the thing is, weak is an interesting word because let's just say I ask you to play like a ghost note type groove, right? Just like a groove that has some ghost notes with your left hand on it. And I ask you to play it backwards. So your left hand is just playing eighth notes on the hi-hat, but your right hand cannot play the ghost notes because you're not used to doing it. So which is the weaker hand in that scenario, right? Like your left hand can execute something that your right hand cannot. So, right, like weak is a very interesting word. Like incapable would be a better word.
Not up to the same level of comfort, I guess.
Depends on what we're talking about. Yeah.
That training those muscles and it getting used to, well, no, their left hand usually plays ghost notes, so the right hand's not as fluid or comfortable in that space.
Yeah, not as dynamic, not as much control.
But if you match it, then you have no problems.
True.
Ever playing anything. I think that would be the case. It's just like if you do match them and they're even limbs, nobody can ever look at you and say you can't play that because of course you can.
Yeah. Well, you have, but that's the thing. That's this ironic part. So I've known this for a long time, but it is interesting. Like you now have the ability to switch, but will you? Will you ever play backwards just for the sake of doing it? Right, because if we're talking about getting paid at the gig to play the appropriate thing, whether in the studio or for a band, nobody cares if you switch. That'll never come up. It's just your choice. If you told someone, I can play this part backwards, they would be like, cool, man. I really don't care which way you play it.
Piece?
You just play it normal, like whatever.
It's nice that you're being a showman right now, but you don't need to be.
Yeah. Like, how much time did you spend working on that? Because it's weird.
It is a showmanship thing. The other thing is guitarists can't do that. Why would they?
Yeah, why would they?
Yeah. Ever need to do that?
All this to say, it's not that there would be no benefit. I wouldn't argue that. There's definitely some cool things that would happen if you matched your hands that way. But that's an interesting topic, a little deeper than I think we both anticipated.
Yeah,
There's a
we're
lot
asking
there.
a lot of questions on this podcast. I'm ready to start some fights on the internet.
Let's go.
Cool.
Thank you for watching this clip from the Orlando Drummer Podcast. And while I have you for the next 20 seconds, I'd like to formally invite you to come check out OrlandoDrummer.com. It is my online drum school, very much in the style of Netflix. And there you'll find over 160 hours of content waiting for you. That's like over 50 drum DVDs. Trust me, you will find something you like, and it would be my honor to help make you a better drummer. Free 7-day trial at the link in the description. I will see you guys there.